The Search for the Forbidden Chamber by Jaquet. Stone, roughly hewn and mortared by some long-forgotten hand, forms a wall. Another wall, possibly fashioned by the same hand, follows parallel, barely a shoulder's width away. A low ceiling bears down from above. Underfoot, a loathsome slime collects in nauseous pools. Darkness so total it nearly gains physical substance. The air is heavy with a dank odor of rotting fungus and decaying wood. A massive beam gives a low, agonized groan as mere mortal handiwork gives to the relentless press of time. Silence broken only by the faint echo of water dripping into some subterranean pool. Suddenly, a spark of light glimmers in the distance. The spark grows as the light feeds on the darkness. Sounds, out of place in the death-like stillness of the corridor, echo ahead of the light. The muted chink of mail beneath leather, an occasional metallic scrape of iron against stone, and the sound of regular but labored breathing. And a voice epitomizing exhaustion and despair. A cry shrieking through the dank atmosphere, battering the stone of the passageway and knifing away into the blackness. "Damn it, Ralph! I told you we should have turned right at that last intersection!" The small band was 3 in number. Dimwit the dwarf, Lumbo the elf, and Ralph Adelonomius, Ralph the wizard. Ralph raised his hand, and the party halted as the aged mage peered into the darkness ahead. "Well, aged mage, this is another screw-up for the old record book," observed Dimwit as he unslung his pack. "Oh yeah, a right turn, a flight of stairs, and we're back on the surface." "Right." The dwarf kicked his pack disgustedly. The wizard walked ahead a few steps. "The ways have changed since last I traveled these passages," observed the old magic user as he stopped beside a pile of rubble and several black and white striped barricades with flashing orange lights bearing the legend Greyhawk Construction Company, Limited. "Oh wow, man. Let's take 5 and hassle this out," said Lumbo as he filled his pipe with leaf. "Anybody got, a light?" "A council at this point would be wise," agreed Dimwit, producing a Zippo for Lumbo and a 6-pack for himself. "This is true," agreed the wizard. "I, for one, say we should proceed ahead and seek a new path of escape from these dreaded mines. What say you, O Master Dwarf?" "I say pound leather back the way we came," responded Dimwit, tossing a beer down in one gulp. "What about you, Lumbo?" How about sending out for a giant anchovy pizza?" asked the elf, loading another bowl. Dimwit chucked his empty beer can in Lumbo's direction. The can missed its intended target and rolled noisily into the blackness behind them. "Cease thy childish play, Dimwit. Who knows what fell beasts lurk in these shadows?" cautioned Ralph. No sooner than the words were out of the wizard's mouth than a large reptilian beast with the words "Ecology Now" written on its chest lumbered into the light, crunching noisily on Dimwit's beer can. "Hell's bells!" cried Dimwit. "A recyclosaurus!" "Flee!" advised the old wizard, pulling on a pair of track shoes. "Right behind you, boss!" yelled back Dimwit, already 20 yards down the corridor. "I'm on the road again," sang Lumbo, shuffling after the now distant pair. With much huffing and puffing, Ralph and Dimwit slowed to a stop at a widening of the passageway. "Thou art certainly fleet of foot, bearded one," gasped Ralph as the pair sank to the floor to rest. "Ran the mile in 3:58 in the NCAA regional before I got into the dungeon exploration business," admitted Dimwit modestly. "Hey, look!" examined the dwarf. "There's a door in the wall here." Indeed, a large iron-studded oak door was set into the wall just ahead. "Let's check out what's on the other side. Maybe it's a way out of this hole." The dwarf eagerly jumped to his feet and tried the massive rusty latch. "Shucks, it won't open," said the dwarf as the latch refused to give, and started beating against the door with his shoulder. "Hold, Dimwit," commanded the wizard. "This portal is inscribed with runes that bode of ill and dark danger. The wizard held his torch closer to illuminate a Wallace for President bumper sticker. "Perhaps this doorway is best left unpassed." "Wow, man, what's happening?" came a voice from behind. Ralph and Dimwit spun around, weapons ready. It was Lumbo. "Lumbo, where the hell you been?" questioned Dimwit. "Just digging on the rocks, man. You should see it. There's some really far-out green ones back there," said Lumbo, jerking his thumb over his shoulder. "I think the rocks are in your head," muttered Dimwit. "Anyway, we're trying to get this door open, but it's locked." "Well, why didn't you just say so, man? Here," said Lumbo, extracting a Master Charge card from his wallet. "Allow me." The elf deftly slipped the plastic card between the door jamb and frame and slid it past the latch. The lock gave a good, loud snick, and the door swung open easily. "It's disgusting that you should know how to do something like that," criticized Dimwit. "Tricks of the trade," shrugged Lumbo. With Lumbo in the lead, the intrepid trio cautiously edged their way into the chamber beyond the door. "Hey, Ralph," called Lumbo. These torches don't give off too much light, you know. How about waving your wand a bit or something?" "The great arts of my order were not meant for such mundane use," grumbled the old mage. "Okay, man, you take the lead." The wizard quickly held his staff aloft and chanted an ancient formula. "Oh my gosh, oh my golly, hubba hubba gygax." Ralph made a motion with his staff. The party's torches all went out. "Geez, some wizard," groaned Dimwit. "Fear not, short stuff," countered the miffed wizard. "This artifact I've been carrying in my pack these many miles shall solve our problem." The wizard produced a curious device and set it on the chamber floor. "'Twas created in an age long past by the peoples of the land of Ever-Ready." The wizard touched a button at the top of the device, and instantly the room was illuminated by a 1,000-watt searchlight. "Behold!" exclaimed the wizard. "Such magic," observed Dimwit's odd voice. "Heavy," agreed Lumbo. The now brilliantly lit room revealed a splendor seldom seen outside the palaces of kings or West Coast discos. The floor was made of gold-veined marble, the beams in the ceiling were carved from rare woods, and rich tapestries hung from the walls. In the center of the room was a gold pedestal, upon which rested an elaborately engraved onyx box. The group approached the dais slowly, marveling at the enigmatic black container. "I cannot help but marvel at this enigmatic black container," said Ralph. "Looks like a stash box to me," observed Lumbo. "Obviously it holds a treasure of great value," added Dimwit, reaching for the box. "That's what I said," replied Lumbo. "Hold!" commanded Ralph, whacking Dimwit's outstretched hand with his staff. "I have heard mention of this curious thing in some of the ancient lays. The tale is long in the telling, so skip it," mumbled Dimwit, massaging his hand, "but contains a warning worth hearing," finished the wizard, shooting a glance at Dimwit that if looks could kill would have turned him into a basket case. "All right already," grumbled the dwarf. "Get on with it." The wizard waved his hand, produced a Barcalounger, and sat down. Another hand wave produced a tequila sunrise, and the old wizard settled back to tell his tale. "Long ago, when this world was still forming, there existed a race of beings much more advanced in the use of the powers of the universe than we." "Wouldn't be hard," interjected Dimwit under his breath. Ralph ignored the interruption and continued. "During this time, the Chutzpah, as they were known, forged the great dingus of power. They used the dingus for all their great works, and it sustained their very existence for eons. Then, in some fashion not told in the lays, the dingus was lost, and the civilization of the Chutzpanians was no more. It's said that he who once again holds the dingus shall inherit the power of the Chutzpah, and rule the world in their place." "So what's the problem? I could get off on being a world ruler," said Dimwit. The old wizard stirred his drink and continued. "The dingus was eventually discovered by a common peasant who used its powers to make himself the person we now call King Glub the Eighth. Determined not to let anyone else capitalize on his good fortune, Glubb had the dingus hidden away in the lowest level of his castle dungeon, with many traps and protective devices to guard the way. The key to the first door of the great vault where the dingus was kept was placed in an onyx box, such as the one we see here. However, the key was inlaid with a spell of great power to protect it from the touch of anyone but Glubb. The lays are vague on this point, but it is believed that either the person touching the key will turn to dust, or have a sudden craving for pistachio ice cream. That is why we must proceed with extreme caution, said the wizard as he finished his tale and his drink at the same time. Hey fellas, look at this! Exclaimed Lumbo. While Ralph had been relating his tale to Dimwit, Lumbo had opened the box and pulled out a curiously shaped key on a gold chain. What a neat pendant! Before Ralph or Dimwit could shout a warning, Lumbo hung the key around his neck. Wow! What a rush! Anybody got any pistachio ice cream? Dimwit and Ralph exchanged knowing glances and started towards Lumbo. Suddenly, however, several previously unnoticed panels in the walls slid open, and a horde of dark figures emerged, swinging half-empty bottles and singing off-colored limericks. "Aye!" cried Dimwit. "Winos! Flee before we are spared change to death," warned the wizard. "What about my ice cream?" wailed Lumbo as the winos, half-crazed on cheap muscatel, staggered closer. Well, gentle readers, is this the end of the line for our fearsome threesome? Will they be able to escape the clutches of the foul winos? And what about Naomi? Be sure and catch our heroes next issue in Buddy, Can You Spare a Dime? Search for the Forbidden Chamber. Conclusion by Jaquet. Synopsis. A small band of explorers, Ralph Adelonomius, Ralph the Wizard, Dimwit the Dwarf, and Lumbo the Elf, have become lost in the depths of an unexplored dungeon. Fighting their way past several obstacles, including the dreaded recyclosaurs, the trio happened upon a small onyx box containing a curiously shaped gold key. Ralph related the tale to the other two members of the party, suggesting that the key may be the key to the first door of the great vault of the ancient King Glubb VIII. According to the ancient lays, the vault contains the great golden dingus of power, of the long-forgotten race known as the Kuspas. Just as Ralph completes his tale, Lumbo removes the key from its resting place. Lumbo's touch springs a trap, and several wall panels slide open, disgorging a horde of half-blitzed winos. "Quickly," urged the wizard, pushing open a large metal door beneath a glowing electric exit sign. "Through here!" Dimwit and Lumbo hurried through the offered escape, and Ralph followed on their heels, pulling the door shut behind them. After the door had latched with an echoing clang, the trio noticed there was no handle on their side. "'Twould appear the fates have urged us along a predestined path," mused Ralph. "No kidding," grumbled Dimwit, lighting a cigar. "But what now?" At that point, a sickly green gas issued from several small openings in the stone walls, and the trio fell to the floor, dead. Editor's note. After reading the first and only page of the manuscript for the conclusion of Search for the Forgotten Chamber, I was a bit disappointed with the rather sudden ending, not to mention several column inches of space still to be filled, a quick consultation with the dice box and 3 consecutive rolls to 0-0, several long-distance phone calls to Mr. Jaquet, and some tricky juggling of printing schedules resulted in a more satisfactory conclusion. Any allegations by Mr. Jaquet concerning browbeating, blackmail, and threats of physical violence are completely false. "What happened?" yawned Lumbo, pushing himself into a sitting position as the last vestiges of the gas dissipated. "Beats me," said Dimwit thickly, shaking his head a few times. "But see if you can get a rise out of Sleeping Beauty over there." The elf gently nudged the prone figure of the old wizard, to no avail. A more insistent shaking of the old mage's shoulder also produced no results. "Wow," said Lumbo in a soft voice. "Do you think he's—" Just then the wizard emitted a loud snore and rolled over on his side. Dimwit gave Ralph a disgusted kick in the posterior. "Just 10 more minutes, dear," came Ralph's sleep-fogged voice. Several more minutes of poking and prodding managed to awaken the sleeping wizard, and Dimwit repeated his question that had been cut short by the sleep gas earlier. "Well, what now?" The old magic user looked in the direction of Dimwit's pointing cigar butt and noticed for the first time a staircase descending to unknown depths and a large black spot on the floor bearing the inscription, Point of No Return. "Since we have no other recourse, let us proceed," the wizard said slowly. "But let us be cautious and move with the utmost care and stealth." 10-4, said Lumbo, swinging a leg over the stairway banister. "Last one to the bottom is a rotten Balrog! Ha 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 ha!" He shouted as he pushed off into space. Ralph and Dimwit exchanged pained looks as they listened to Lumbo's high-pitched giggles fade away into the darkness, and with a sigh of resignation started down the stairs. "Long have been the years since last a human foot traced this passage," observed Ralph as every step raised a cloud of choking dust. "This is true," coughed Dimwit as they rounded another landing, and still the stairs led downward. "But perhaps that is a good omen for—" Dimwit's speech was interrupted as several 10-foot steel bolts shot out from the walls, narrowly missing the pair. "Perhaps there are no traps to worry about," he finished lamely. Ralph and Dimwit continued their descent, pausing only to climb over some werebear bones protruding from beneath a 5-ton block of stone that had obviously fallen from the ceiling, and to ponder some enigmatic runes concerning someone known only by the initials A.S., and a journey to the center of the earth. At last, the stairs ended. At the bottom, the pair found fresh tracks that could have been made only by Lumbo's stumbling walk leading down a passageway. The dwarf and wizard followed the tracks for a short distance to a point where they ended in front of a massive wooden door. Of Lumbo, there was no trace. "That puny person must have passed this portal previously," pondered the perplexed magician. "Yeah, and the writer's using too much alliteration, too," agreed Dimwit. "I suppose we have to open this bugger, too?" "Either that or the story ends here," said Ralph, much to the editor's horror. The pair tried the door, but to no avail. Ralph spoke several magical incantations, but still the door refused to open. Finally, Dimwit unshouldered his pack and shook the contents onto the floor. Kicking aside a 2-iron and a fly-casting rod, the door finally came up with a 4-foot wrecking bar. After fitting the bar into place, the two heaved mightily, and the door gave way with a splintering crash. Lumbo's tracks continued on the other side, and the pair followed them down the hall. The tracks ended in front of yet another door. "Here we go again," muttered Dimwit as he retrieved his crowbar. "Hold, Dimwit," cautioned the old mage. "Look at the lock. Is not that the key that was found by Master Elf, still within the keyhole? Methinks this sign may bode ill fate, and a council of opinions might—" "How come you talk so funny?" interrupted Dimwit. "Makes for good copy," admitted the wizard. "At any rate, it's obvious the bad guys snatched Lumbo just as soon as he opened the door. What you think?" "Got ya," smiled Dimwit, pulling out his battle axe and kicking open the door. The pair had been ready for nearly anything, but certainly not for the sight that greeted them behind the door. In the center of the large chamber lay the bodies of several horrible creatures, including a number of giant insects, snakes, and other creepy crawlies, 2 medium-sized dragons, 3 life insurance salesmen, a couple of IRS investigators, and an undercover narcotics agent. Lumbo sat leaning against the wall, completely engrossed in a dog-eared copy of Play Elf. "Lumbo!" shouted Dimwit, dropping his axe and hurrying towards the elf. "What? How? What? When? Huh?" Lumbo looked up from his magazine. "Oh, far out! You guys finally got here." With a last glance at the magazine's centerfold, and a sigh, the elf stood up and dusted off the seat of his pants. "But Lumbo!" cried Ralph. "How came you to defeat this ghastly company in single combat?" "Yeah, well, first I pulled out my trusty old sword like this." Lumbo drew forth his weapon, turned swiftly, and tripped over his scabbard. "Well, not just exactly like that, but, anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Well, as I pulled out my sword, I decided to try to fool him. I looked over my shoulder and yelled, 'Come on, guys, let's get him!' They didn't believe it. Then I told them I was a 27th level magic user, and if they'd leave me alone, I'd spare them. They didn't believe that either. Then I called the dragons illegitimate sons of sand lizards, told the IRS guys I hadn't paid taxes for 10 years, said I wanted to buy $25,000 worth of life insurance, and flashed my legalized pot button. Then I turned off the lights and jumped outside. In the confusion, with everyone trying to get at me, I guess they tore each other up. 'Cause when I came back in here, they'd all snuffed each other. Except for that cockroach over there in the corner. Lumbo indicated a dark spot in the floor with a wave of his pipe. And I squished it myself, he said proudly. Ralph and Dimwit looked at each other in amazement, partly in reaction to Lumbo's tale, and partly because it was the longest coherent speech they had ever heard him make. At any rate, Lumbo continued, there's a really neat-looking door over there on the other side of that room. How's about a look-see? Indeed, on the other side of the chamber was a large bronze door, now green with the tarnish of the ages. Green door, what's that secret you're keepin'? Sang Lumbo, as the trio approached the foreboding portal. Ralph and Dimwit gritted their teeth in frustration and fell to examining the door. Say, Dimwit, asked Ralph from his knees, why do we always fall when we examine something? Maybe you're just clumsy, offered a strange voice. What's that? Exclaimed Dimwit. I'm a strange voice. Didn't you just read it? Came the answer. Boy, the acoustics in these dungeons are terrible, mumbled Dimwit. I think I'm hearing things. Hey guys, look at this. Lumbo was pointing to a small white button set near the edge of the door. I wonder what it does, he asked Lumbo to himself as he gave the button a poke. Lumbo, don't! Cried Ralph and Dimwit. Chimes sounded and reverberated throughout the dungeon. Once, twice, 3 times, and with a loud groan the door opened before the 3 explorers. Far out, said Lumbo, shuffling into the chamber beyond. The room behind the door was a startling change from all the 3 had seen thus far in their travels. All the walls, the floor, and even the ceiling were of polished metal. Light blazed from an unseen source, gleaming off the metal and illuminating a single pedestal in the center of the room. The trio continued forward slowly, hands at their weapons, and approached the pedestal. The block was smooth on all sides, about 1 foot square and perhaps 4 feet tall. As the group neared, they could discern the top was inlaid with several round objects. A closer inspection showed the objects to be beer bottle tops. This is the lock to the great vault, whispered Ralph. By pressing the right combination of bottle tops on the top of the pedestal, one can disarm the protective devices and open the gates to the vault. And if not? Questioned Dimwit. The wizard shook his head. None have ever returned to tell. The mage, however, seemed drawn to the compelling device, and his arm stretched towards the top of the pedestal, as if to touch one of the bottle cap buttons. Lumbo grabbed Ralph's arm and quickly pulled him back. Not this time, pea-brain, reprimanded Lumbo. We must make this decision on the basis of careful logic and thought. Otherwise, spoil sport, muddled Ralph, stepping back and folding his arms impatiently. Amazed at the usually thoughtless elf's foresight, Dimwit's mouth dropped open in surprise. Unfortunately, the dwarf had forgotten his cigar butt, clenched between his teeth. As the group watched with horror, the offending El Ropo bounced once on a Pabst cap, rolled over on a Schlitz malt lid, and came to rest on a Coors seal. Torches flared. Unseen gongs pealed forth, and a section of one wall, undisturbed for unknown eons, slid open with a jerk and a loud rasp of rusted metal against metal. Such luck, breathed Dimwit. The fates are kind, agreed Ralph. Shucks, fellas. It's 'cause I'm a Libra born on a cusp, said Lumbo modestly. The group moved towards the new opening in the wall, slowly at first, then with increasing boldness, as they sought the reward of the end of their quest. Inside the small chamber was a low dais covered with purple silk. Upon the silk rested a small but intricately carved gold box. Heedless of possible danger, Dimwit snatched the box from the dais and opened the lid. The dwarf's face, bright with expectation, suddenly fell, and with a blank stare He held out the box for the other's inspection. Inside was a note. To whom it may concern, finders, keepers. Signed, Frodo Baggins.